Hi, I'm Ann Bocock. Won't you join me for Between the Covers, a show designed to give you, the viewer, an opportunity to read, discuss, and meet some really great authors.
You guys are good.
Now you're making me get a little misty here.
George Washington had found out about a secret plot to kill him.
I was so good under the water, I can even cook a meal under there.
Sundays at 10:30 p.m.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
CNC Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, CNC provides patient-centered care for your entire family. CNC Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams, Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans. We're joining us today, one of the best we have in the state, award-winning journalist and accomplished author, Les East of Crescent Sports Down South. Crescent Sports and also Saturday Down South. Also, again, a great book as well. Les, welcome to the program. Good to have you here as we get prepared for, again, Easter weekend here in New Orleans.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be with you. Happy Holy Week.
Yes, yes it is. Yes, it is. Of course, we're taping this program today on a Tuesday because, again, Holy Thursday on obviously Thursday, and of course the Good Friday, and then into the Easter weekend. So, again, for all those, again, we appreciate you guys checking out the program throughout the weekend. Les, before we get started, tell the folks a little bit about what you're doing, who you're writing for, and please let us know about your book, again, which is, again, as we go into another election cycle, is pretty timely.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, I think it is still timely. It came out in 2020, right before the last presidential election, and I think the themes, it's called Donkeys, Elephants, and Giraffes. It's about politics and the media, and I think a lot of the themes in the story are as relevant today, if not more relevant, as we head into apparently a rematch of the last presidential election. So folks can find it on all the major online platforms, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or just Google the title, Donkeys, Elephants, and Giraffes. As far as the day-to-day stuff, I'm writing, of course, as you said, CrescentCitySports.com. A lot going on with the Pelicans and the Saints, which we'll get into shortly. And for SaturdayDownSouth.com, I cover LSU and the SEC and some other teams as well. And so that's been keeping me busy. And also, when the fall comes back, I'll be on The Ticket.
Yes.
As part of the Friday, Ken Trahan's original prep football report on Friday night. We're all excited about the rebranding and the growth of the radio station.
Absolutely. Again, it's really exciting times, no doubt about it. Let's start off with the Saints, and again, owners meeting happening right now in Orlando. I'm not going to get into the rule changes. That again, that's a deep rabbit hole to start jumping into right now. We'll kind of let that the dust settle. But yesterday, Mickey Loomis met with the New Orleans media that was there in Orlando covering the event, and then today it was Dennis Allen meeting the media as they normally do for the breakfast right after during that owners meeting. Let's take Dennis Allen first, and one of the things that came out of that was Ryan Ramczyk may not be ready for the regular season, may not be ready to play. Seemed to be a little bit of a setback in his surgery, not responding maybe to the surgery. This is huge. He renegotiated his deal to open up more cap space. He's got a huge cap number. They added dummy years to that contract also. I believe he took maybe a little bit of a pay cut as well. This is huge for the Saints, who again are going to be looking for an offensive lineman, I think, in the draft, especially again considering again the talent pool that's in the draft when it comes to offensive linemen this upcoming season. But that is a huge loss if he cannot play. That's a huge loss again when you start talking again also the salary cap and the implications there of having a player that's making the type of money he is that may not be able to go this year as well. Yeah, that's disappointing news for the Saints and for Ryan. Yes. Immediately after the season, there was a lot of concern that this was going to be the case, that his status was going to be very much uncertain. And then for a while there, I was hearing that it was trending forward, that the examination of the knee and the impending surgery led them to believe that things might not be that bad and that he might be ready for training camp and everything might be good. Now, whatever the setback was has changed the narrative again. I think tackle was going to be their top priority in the draft before this latest development. It only becomes more so. Right. As you mentioned, it's one of the stronger positions in the draft, which is good news for the Saints. Yes. Picking, I believe, at number 14. So, it just puts a big question mark on the most important position on the team. Best offensive lineman they have may not be available. Right. So that is something that was already a big need, and it suddenly becomes a little bit of a crisis here moving forward. I agree with again your sentiments there, because when you look at where the team is right now, with obviously battling the cap gymnastics every single year, he carries a big cap number. At some point, he couldn't really play a lot. He couldn't practice a lot last year, missed some games. Is he a guy now that really starts from him his own health, thinking about his future years outside of football, starts thinking that maybe it's time to hang it up? And then how does that affect the Saints going forward? In terms of the salary cap, his bonuses becoming due. Again, I know there's dummy years on that contract, but also, again, the urgency now to be able to get another tackle. Is Penning a guy that you can move to the right side? Is he more comfortable on the right side? Again, the former #1 pick. Is this a situation now where you're now hoping that quarterbacks and wide receivers, there's a run on those guys, so maybe one of the top tackles will fall to you at 14? Or maybe you're taking a second look at that free agency market and maybe saying, now we need to bring another veteran in. Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of tentacles. There really are. Yeah. And the problem is you don't know, and I think they were hoping to have a little more positive clarity on Ramczyk's situation as the draft approached, so that they would have a better idea of just how desperately they needed offensive linemen. Now it's a lot more negative, and so going into the draft, that has to be foremost in their mind, is what do we do with the offensive line? It looks like a bunch of quarterbacks are going to go before they pick. I think as soon as one wide receiver goes, there's going to be a run there. Yeah. So that could very well be helpful to them. But for Ramczyk himself, he's got to be looking at his career, not just this season, because if he's not able to play this year, and this is an ongoing chronic issue as it has been for a couple of years, he's got to start thinking about his quality of life after retirement. Absolutely. And knee replacements potentially down the road. Hopefully it doesn't get to that, but he's got a lot of stuff he's
calculating in his mind about whether it's worth it to keep pursuing this career. And I don't think he's at that point yet, but he's got to be thinking through all of this. As far as Trevor Penning goes, you know, just a huge question mark. They are certainly hoping that he finds a place somewhere on the offensive line. Right now, I wouldn't expect it to be left tackle. Perhaps it's right tackle if Ramczyk can't do it. Maybe it's a guard somewhere. At this point, I think they're just hopeful that we can find a place where he can contribute. And as far as him replacing Ramczyk or ultimately being the left tackle, I think that's too far down the road for them to look at. I think this year they just want to find a place where he can play.
Right. Well, one of the good things, and I've talked about it, we've talked about it. This is a new offense. Everybody's on the ground floor of this offense now. Everyone has to learn this offense together. And again, the offensive line, again with the zone blocking scheme, is that more of a better fit for Penning? Look, we've seen this. Ramczyk was a guy that was a left tackle in college and played right tackle in the pros. And again, we know now it's a little bit different when it comes to the NFL because most teams are trying to get two pass rushing, either defensive ends or again a linebacker that has the ability to rush the passes. So again, it's a little bit tougher in the NFL. You have to have again two really good tackles. It used to have a good left tackle and maybe a guy that couldn't play left tackle to play your right tackle. We can't do that anymore. You have two guys that can really again keep the pass rushers out of the backfield and protect the quarterback. And we know with Derek Carr, one thing we've learned over the year here in New Orleans is he needs protection to be effective.
Yeah, you're right, and you know the right tackle, left tackle thing has sort of balanced out.
Yeah, really.
The quality that you need at left tackle has not come down. It's the right tackle has gone up because the pass rushers have become so much more commonplace that you have to upgrade your right tackle compared to what it used to be. And with your best offensive lineman, one of the better right tackles in the NFL being a question mark, it really creates, like I said, a bit of a crisis for the offseason. So, you know, that's where everything kind of begins and ends with what they're going to do at that tackle spot and goes through, trickles through the offense and the rest of the line. And the changes on offense, and we don't have a lot of understanding of exactly what they're going to do. We haven't spoken to Clint Kubiak yet, and my understanding is we might not until OTAs. So we don't know exactly what they're getting, but it is a transition period, and maybe that's a good thing for Trevor Penning, maybe not. We don't know, but they do have a new coaching staff on offense, a new coaching philosophy. So if you have to have major changes in your personnel, I guess it's not the worst time for that to happen because everything's in transition now. You're kind of starting over in a sense with your offense and your offensive line. So, you know, we'll see how it all plays out, but that's going to be the major storyline, not only with the draft and what's left of free agency, but training camp and right up to kickoff for the opener.
No doubt. And look, the Saints have done a really, there was a time when, again, you could question their medical staff. You could question, again, what they did in terms of their training staff, rehab, etc. But they've done a much better job with their older players in giving them those veteran days off. I mean, you've seen it with Cam Jordan, you've seen it with Ryan Ramczyk, just having those guys ready for Sunday if possible, and maybe not having to practice as much during the week. It'll be interesting to see again how that plays out during training camp as well, especially again with the veterans that you know you're going to need to count on during the year, but maybe again you don't want to put a lot of tread on those guys during practice as well. And how does that affect Ramczyk going forward if he is a guy that again can play this season?
Yeah, well, he rarely practiced during the week last year. I don't think he practiced a whole lot during the week in 22. You know, for a guy his age, that's kind of surprising. But that's been an accommodation to the chronic knee issue that he's had. And going forward, I think that's going to be the same, if not even more so, that they're going to have to limit his reps, I think probably especially in training camp. Now, we don't even know if he's going to be ready for training camp. But at whatever point he gets ready to start practicing, they're going to have to be very judicious in how they do that, and just hope that he's able to go out there on Sunday and get through the games. And he's been kind of a warrior here in recent years in doing the best he could, but it's getting harder and harder. And You know, they've managed it pretty well. You mentioned Cam. They've done that a bit with Demario Davis.
Right.
But I think probably Ramczyk going forward is going to be Exhibit A in how you do that.
And we're seeing a diminishing skill set with him as well. Ramczyk is not the same player he was. He's still, again, a very, I would say, above serviceable right tackle. Okay, but again, you've seen the toll that's been taken on him physically with this knee. And of course, they had high hopes going in with this surgery that this would maybe correct some of the problems and that he would be able to go next season. Now that's kind of up in the air. $9 million under the cap right now. If they have to go out and make a deal, one thing that Allen did say today, obviously we know this, you will see another wave of veterans that will be released or again be available after the draft. We see this. The Saints can have at least 3 more players that they can rework their deals, restructure those deals to be able to open up some more cap room if they choose to. Kamara, Taysom Hill, and Jawan Johnson are 3 candidates there if necessary, so we'll see how that plays out. The other big question, again, for Dennis Allen today was Chase Young. Same thing with Mickey Loomis yesterday. Again, the injury, the neck injury. We know, again, that New Orleans exploded last week with, first of all, them signing Chase Young, what was called a $13 million fully guaranteed contract, to, again, 24 hours later, finding out he needs neck surgery, and then finding out again that the Saints did protect themselves in terms of the contract. Again, $5 million signing bonus, which is guaranteed, but then we will be on a per game payment type plan. We're about $470,000 a game, and of course, again, that'll be based on being available on game day. That is a signing bonus, so they can amortize that over a 5-year period, so it's not killing them on the cap this year, which was a concern when you say you're going to give one player $13 million guaranteed. It's $5 million guaranteed, and then the rest of the money is a signing bonus. The big question with him is a guy that was a second overall pick in the draft, played well for San Francisco after being traded from Washington last year. He's on a 1-year prove-it-to-me deal. A lot of the Saints free agents pickups are this year.
Yeah.
Number one, will he be available for mini camp, training camp, and then again, will he be available for the regular season coming off of neck surgery? Saints seem to believe he will be. What are your thoughts?
Well, we don't know. You know, a knee is a neck is a very tricky thing.
Especially defensive linemen, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can ask Peyton Manning about that, and certainly with a defensive lineman, it's significant. Now, I don't have any problem with what the Saints did and how they did it. Okay, this is a guy with tremendous potential upside.
Agreed.
They handled the contract well, even though initial reports suggested otherwise.
Agreed.
We've now learned better. If things were, and they knew, I'm sure they knew about the neck issue when they signed him. The one mistake they made, the one mistake they made was not being upfront about it and saying he's got to have a neck procedure. We're confident he'll be ready for the start of training camp and move on.
Right.
Instead, it looked like, because they didn't say that, when it comes out, it looks like either they didn't do their homework or they were just clueless about the whole thing, which wasn't the case apparently. But if they had just met it head on at the beginning, they could have avoided all that. But we're to the point now where it's just about getting the procedure done, getting him ready. And nobody knows. They're hopeful he'll be ready for training camp. If he is, then he should be as good as he's going to get for the start of the regular season. I think he's 24 years old. He was Defensive Rookie of the Year, showed flashes of that last year. If he's healthy, he's potentially worth 5 or 10 times what they're paying him.
Agreed.
For this 1 year.
If you just look at what defensive ends are making.
Sure. But you're rolling the dice.
Right.
But you don't get that opportunity at that price unless there's a roll of the dice involved.
And a little bit of a damaged goods here in his case.
So the only way they were going to get that quality of a player at that position was to do it the way they did. Get somebody with a question mark who could greatly exceed the salary. And if it doesn't work out, well, they haven't really lost a whole lot. They're back to where they started. But they gave themselves a chance to upgrade what I think is the second biggest need on the roster at this offseason.
Yeah, I would agree. It also helps Cam Jordan. Sure. Okay. Again, now nobody knows what the rotation is going to look like, but again, even at this advanced age for Cam Jordan, who reworked his deal, he'll be here for a couple more years. You look at having to really count on him down in, down out. Now there's a situation where maybe you're rotating him. Maybe he's not having to play first, second, and third down. Maybe he's a guy you're bringing in as a pass rush specialist on third down, depending on, again, how effective Chase Young can be.
Yeah, and if Young pans out, even if he's not all-pro caliber,
yes.
if he's a good rush end, then it helps them out in a few ways. It not only can it limit Cam's reps and make him more effective while he's out there and maybe be a more effective pass rusher, which really wasn't last year while he was playing hurt for much of the time, but it also draws more attention to the other side, so Cam may not face as many double teams as he has in the past, and then it gives you a little bit of a hedge if Isaiah Foskey or Peyton Turner doesn't pan out. Of course, Turner's been hurt.
Yes.
And they're still hopeful he's going to be a good player. Foskey, I think, was disappointing as a rookie, but he was a rookie. There's still time.
Sure.
So they could have a very good rotation at defensive end. But if those younger guys don't pan out, but Young does, then they've covered themselves there. So the trickle-down effect from this signing is significant. But again, we're not going to know probably until September.
Right. And again, you're hoping that he will be able to get on the field during training camp, because you want to be able to see them within a rotation. You want to be able to see it, again, working in concert with, again, the rest of the alignment, which takes me now to Malcolm Roach signing with a 2-year deal with Denver. And now the defensive tackle position needing some help there as well. Again, the question is, will they go after a veteran defensive tackle, or are they going to look that way in the draft to be able to fill that spot? Because that is now a need with Roach moving on.
Yeah, Malcolm Roach was not a big name player, but he's not an insignificant loss either. He was a good player, and with him gone now, I think defensive tackle perhaps becomes the number 3 as we're going through all these needs they have. That could be number 3. So they have to address it somewhere. I think what they'll do is see what's there in the draft. I think it's unlikely they will use the first-round pick on that, but I think they will try and get good value fairly high in the draft. And if that doesn't work out, then that second wave of free agency, you start looking for a veteran. But one way or another, they're going to have to address that. I think they will look to the draft first, see if they can get good value there, and if not, they'll fall back onto the free agency.
Now they're anticipating Brian Brzee, again, taking the next step, especially, again, how he played toward the back end of the season. Again, injuries have been a little bit of an issue with him in college. We'll see, again, how that plays out. Another big question mark is, again, all the rumors around Marshawn Lattimore, and again, him reworking his deal, with an option bonus, that if he is traded after June the 1st, the Saints at that point can maybe move that bonus with part of that salary with him in a trade. There's a $45 million dead money hit if they try to trade him before June 1st. They want to try to, again, amortize that over the last few years of the deal, adding dummy years there, as they always do. But the market's been set now. Again, what we've seen, Snead went for a third-round pick. We saw recently another cornerback go for a third-round pick. To me, when you look at the New Orleans Saints, after losing Yedem to San Francisco last week in free agency, I think Lattimore means more to this team on the roster than maybe what you can get for him in a trade. Considering, again, everybody's thinking second-round, first-round pick. If the market's a third-round pick for a top corner now, and that looks like it is, to me, he's worth more to the Saints on the roster than trying to be able to trade him and maybe move off of his salary and maybe bring in some draft picks.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And the Snead trade, I think, changed the whole perspective on this, because it tells you that, at least right now, you can't get proper value for Lattimore in a trade if that's the standard that's been set. Now, after you get past June 1st and maybe teams have gone through OTAs, training camp begins, and some teams see that their cornerback position is not as good as they thought it was going to be, maybe you find yourself a motivated buyer, and that changes. Yeah. But for now, I don't see a trade happening, and I think they may have been a misinterpretation along the way, because the Saints restructured the deal, and as part of the restructuring, they made a trade easier to absorb.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people thought that that meant they're looking to get rid of him. I think they were just doing their due diligence. While we're reworking this deal, let's expand our options. So if we do want to move him, because he's one of the few guys we can afford to part with, because we have young guys at that position who would bring something significant in return. So I think it was smart on their part to give them that option, but I don't think that was ever a commitment to getting rid of him, because he's a very good player and they like him. He's played well when he's been healthy. So, you know, you're right, he's more valuable on the roster than what the market apparently would bring, and my expectation is he will certainly be on the roster come June 1st, and there's a very good chance he'll be there at the start of training camp and the start of the season.
It certainly appears so, especially again, if the most you're going to get right now is a third-round pick for him. It makes you're better off with Lattimore, even a Lattimore that maybe has been a little bit more injured the last 2 seasons, again, than maybe trade him off for picks for next season. Because those picks would not be in this season's draft. That would be that's the issue here. Again, Saints don't have a 3rd or 4th round pick. They'd like to be able to get that back and have that in this draft. But again, my scenario was you trade him post June 1st. You trade to get back into this draft this year, and then maybe pick those picks up in next year's draft. But again, to me, he's more valuable on the field. In free agency, they've really gone after players and maybe given them just 1-year deals. Only Cedric Wilson got a 2-year deal. Willie Gay got a 1-year deal for $5 million. Oli Udoh got a 1-year deal from Minnesota, the guard tackle. New Orleans native Stanley Johnson, wide receiver from Cincinnati, more of a special teams guy, 1-year deal as well. Nathan Peterman, the backup quarterback from Chicago, who again will be backing up Derek Carr possibly. Again, a 1-year deal. There's a theme there of, again, not really maybe more prove it to me deals to this player. Of all of those guys, to me, Willie Gay is the most intriguing and maybe the guy with the biggest upside for this team.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in most of these cases, this was done for the benefit of the Saints and the player. You mentioned the Saints are like, show me. We're going to give you a 1-year deal. Show us you're worth more than that. And we'll give you some incentives so you'll make more money this year if you reach those incentives. Show us you're worth a long-term deal after this year. At the same time, it's a chance for the player to show, hey, I'm better than what the market is giving me this year. And maybe they can get a better offer next year, whether it's from the Saints or somebody else. So I think that's mutually beneficial to do it that way. As far as Willie Gay, yeah, I think he potentially has the most upside. And I always go back when free agency was first becoming a big thing. That to me, the poster player for finding a young emerging player who's not commanding a lot of money on the market and hoping they will blossom for you was another former Chief, and that was Joe Horn. You remember in 2000?
Yes, I did.
Randy Mueller went out and signed Joe Horn, and he was a guy that, hey, this is a nice young player who's not had a great opportunity where he's at. We think he's ready to become a really good player. He became one of the best players in Saints history. And Willie Gay, I think, maybe is the same type of guy. They're banking on him producing even more than he had in Kansas City, and I think he produced well in Kansas City.
And the question is now, do the Saints change their defensive scheme a little bit more now? I mean, again, are you putting 3 linebackers on the field now instead of, again, what they've been doing over the last few years, which is putting safeties on the field in lieu of maybe that 3rd linebacker, when you look at, again, having a guy with the skill set of a Willie Gay and his athleticism?
Yeah, I think ostensibly they brought in Willie Gay to replace Zach Bond, who had left in free agency. But I think it's also an upgrade. Even though Bond came on last year, this is a more versatile, more explosive player who can stay on the field, like you mentioned, all 3 downs. So now they don't have to play a fifth or sixth defensive back as much as they have in the past, although there are times when you want to do that if you have the depth they've had recently in the secondary. So it gives Dennis Allen the flexibility to play three linebackers more if that's the matchup they want with a particular opponent. They can do what they've been doing in the past with more two linebackers and an extra DB if that's what the matchup warrants. So it allows them to do what they want to do more than what they had to do in the past. So I think the flexibility is really important.
Safety is also going to be a need for this team with Marcus May being released. Again, right now it looks like it's going to be Michael Thomas, and Michael Thomas will be a post-June 1st cut. It doesn't look like it looks like Jameis Winston will be a post-June 1st cut as well. Not Marcus May. Alan briefly mentioned Jordan Howden as a young player they like today, which needs some experience. It'll be interesting to see if they go out and try to get a veteran in that second wave of free agency, or if they will go in the draft again and try to draft a safety.
Yeah.
Although I liked what Howden did last year.
Yeah, Jordan Howden is a good prospect. He played a lot of games in college.
Yes.
So he arrived last year farther advanced than a lot of rookies and played well. They were very happy with the way he played. Started some games when injuries necessitated it. And I think they want him to compete for Marcus May's position, but I don't think they're convinced he's ready to take it over, and therefore they want to have insurance at that position. And I think they will treat safety in a manner similar to the way I think they're going to treat defensive tackle. If there's a good opportunity to address it in the draft, you do it, although I think they might prefer a more experienced player, because whoever you draft is going to be less experienced than Howden. So I think their preference would be to get a veteran in the second wave of free agency that gives them somebody a little more of a sure thing in the secondary. But it could certainly be addressed in the draft, again, if the value is there. They got Howden, I believe, was in the 5th round last year, and he wound up being very good value.
Cornerback, is, again, might be an issue. It might be another position with Yetta moving on. We'll see again how that works out. Overall, your thoughts on what they've done in free agency before we wrap up the Saints?
Well, I think it's kind of who they are in free agency right now, because they don't have a lot of money to be big spenders. What they do is they lose a serviceable player and they try and find another serviceable player to replace them at less money than they would have had to pay to keep the person who left in the first place. We talked about the linebackers. So that's kind of the centerpiece of their free agency seasons at this point because of the cap situation. But the wild card and all that is Chase Young. If Chase Young winds up being what they hope he will be, this class gets elevated significantly. If it doesn't pan out, then it's just a ho-hum class that doesn't do a whole lot to advance where this team is. But we'll see that there could still be 2 or 3 important players, not huge players. He could be one.
Especially now, again, he's played right tackle. He's played guard. Again, with the Ramsek situation now, again, he could be a guy that, again, he's looked at to be maybe a guy that's going to be a James Hurst type that can play multiple positions for you on the line. But he could be a guy that could end up starting for you.
Yeah, he's definitely in the mix. At the very least, he's like Hurst and a useful, versatile backup. But because of the fluid situation, he could wind up being a starter somewhere in that mix. But also, I think in the, after the other cut downs, they still may add 2 or 3 players that won't be huge impact players, but will be useful players. So we don't know what this class is going to ultimately look like, but right now Chase Young is the guy who can raise the ceiling.
And I would throw Willie Gay in there as well. I agree. Because before the Young signing, he was the big signing for this team. Les East of CrestCitySports.com is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll hear from our underwriters. We come back, we'll jump into some Pels. We'll talk a little bit about LSU Tulane. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Les East of CressidySports.com is with us on the panel today. All right, let's talk some Pels. Man, this is just a lot to unpack here with the Pelicans because, again, you've got, first of all, the situation with Brandon Ingram and the injury. A hyperextension of the left knee, bone bruise. They're going to reevaluate that on April 5th, which is 2 weeks from the injury, which was last Thursday. You know, this is about pain tolerance more than anything else. Structurally, it looks like the knee is fine, and then that comes down to, is this going to be the Brandon Ingram we've seen in the past, where he's a guy that will take a toe injury and be out 6 weeks? Or is this going to be the new improved Pelican players that are, again, not missing the significant time we've seen in the past when they have had injuries? Now, was that an Aaron Nelson situation where he was more cautious with injuries and maybe the new staff not so much? It'll be interesting to see. You're in the middle of a playoff race right now. Mm-hmm. This is a huge 6-game homestand for this team where they're playing among the top teams in the NBA. You literally are, they're in 4th place right now as this program is being recorded. Mm-hmm. They could literally fall into the play-in tournament, okay? Again, if they don't do well on this 6-game homestand, where again, they're taking on Oklahoma City on Tuesday night, Milwaukee on Thursday night, Boston on Saturday night, Phoenix on Monday night, Orlando on Wednesday, and then, of course, the San Antonio Spurs on the following Friday. Just a brutal stretch for them. Let's take Brandon Ingram first. Right. Thankfully, again, it didn't look like the injury was significant enough to keep him out for the rest of the season, which we all, the way it looked like it was. Yeah. Give me your gut. You've covered this team all season long. It seems to be they're dealing with injuries better than they ever have. Give me your gut on what you think is going to happen here.
Well, there are 2 elements to this. One, I would caution people about getting too excited about the 2-week time frame they were given. Okay?
That's a reevaluation of the 2 weeks.
It's a reevaluation. Right. Okay. So that was last Friday after he got back from Orlando. So we're talking about April 5th, the day that they play the Spurs. Right. He'll be reevaluated. They're not going to reevaluate him and say he's starting against the Spurs tonight.
Got to ramp up, right?
Got to ramp up. It could be he's going to continue treatment and we'll reevaluate in another 2 weeks. It could be, okay, he's been cleared to practice, he'll return when he's ready, or it could be something worse than that. We don't know. Right. They're going to see how he responds to the treatment. So let's not start looking for him coming off the bench, you know, during pregame introductions here in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
And now there are 2 elements to this, and you brought up a very good point about the pain tolerance, that he has not been the best example of playing through relatively minor injuries.
Agreed.
And he's had problems in the past that have been, we've been told they've been relatively short periods of times in the prognosis, and it winds up being 2, 3, 4 times that.
Right.
Now, this is the season. The whole thing, everything they've been doing for a year is on the line over the next 3, 4, 5 weeks. So if he's ever going to be motivated to get back and play through whatever discomfort there might be, this is it. Also, I think you saw in him before he got hurt for a several-week stretch, He was having a great time. He was modifying his game to complement Zion Williamson.
Agreed.
He had totally bought into whatever role he needed to have because they were enjoying the success so much. So everything is in place for him to be motivated to get back out there as soon as it's physically reasonable for him to do so.
Yes.
So if he doesn't respond in a positive manner now, you have to wonder if he ever will.
Right.
I think he will. I think he'll try to get back out as soon as he can. But then I still think that's a very vague thing. You know, a hyperextended knee injury, and my limited knowledge from reading up on this, you know, there could be trauma to ligaments or cartilage.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean a tear, but it could mean some sort of trauma there.
Yes.
When you hear the bone contusion, it's easy to say, oh, he bruised his knee, he'll be back, no problem. But the hyperextension is the more important word. We don't know what that means exactly, but if you look at the injury, it didn't look good. Excuse me. So I would say, let's be cautious. We'll see how it plays out.
Pels again lost to Orlando 121-106. They came back and avenged that loss in the Smoothie King Center to the Miami Heat, which I think was a huge win for this team. Blew them out 111 to 88. They come back and beat lowly Detroit 114-101. 3-1 on that road trip. They have won 9 of their last 11, 18 of their last 22. They're 44-27 as we record this program on a Tuesday. They have to win 6 of the next out of the next 11 to get the 50-win mark. As mentioned, with the Clippers losing last night, they are in 4th place because again it's a tie, but again they have the tiebreaker because of the win of the season series. But I mentioned the brutal stretch here. Oklahoma City, again a top team in the West. Milwaukee, a top team in the East. Boston, a top team in the East. Phoenix is fighting for a playoff spot. Orlando, again, just end up beating the Pels in Orlando. And look, even whether Wemby plays or not, San Antonio is an up-and-coming team and can bite you if you're not on your game. It's so tough to analyze this stretch here without knowing whether Brandon Ingram is going to be available, and it doesn't look like he is. I mean, who's going to step up? Is it going to be Trey Murphy? Are we going to see this bench play like they did again against Miami and Detroit? Because again, they are playing at home. That's a plus, but yet again they've been a better team on the road, right? But this is again the NBA did no favors for this team down the stretch. When you're looking at this is a murderer's row at home to be able to really end the season before they go on that 4-game road trip to end the season out west.
Yeah, this ties for the longest homestand of the season, and yet it may be the most challenging stretch of the season because of the quality of the opponents you mentioned. So it's going to be a real gauntlet. As far as people stepping up, I actually think they can mitigate Ingram's absence fairly well, and there are a few reasons for that. One, Zion Williamson is playing like a first-team NBA, all-NBA player right now, and I think he is thriving on this. And you say he played 36 minutes on Sunday against Detroit in a game that they had in control the whole time. I think he will continue. He was elevating his game steadily before the injury. I think he recognizes now he has to elevate it at an even faster rate to make up for the absence of Ingram. Ingram not being able to go in and take over as the lead scoring while Zion rests, I think requires Zion to be even better while he's on the floor and probably play a few more minutes. So I think his impact can be even greater. As a practical matter, Trey Murphy has to pick up the scoring load. He takes Ingram's spot in the starting lineup. He's probably their 4th best scorer, maybe 3B behind C.J. McCollum. I think he was 0 for 10 on 3-pointers against Detroit, 0 for 9, 0 for 10. That can't happen. That can't continue to happen. I don't think it will. He's too good a shooter for that to happen, too good a scorer. So I think he can pick up a lot of that which is lost on the offensive end. Then the other thing that has not gotten a lot of attention is I was at practice last Monday, the last time they practiced in New Orleans before they went to Brooklyn. And Dyson Daniels was out there practicing, did not have anything on his knee. Willie Green said a week and a half. Dyson said a week and a half.
Right.
That puts us around this weekend, maybe the Boston game. He could be back on the court in this homestand. That gives them the same number of players in the rotation. He takes Ingram's spot,
right,
numbers-wise. It gives them a long defender, gives them more depth at point guard. So I think his return, Murphy and Williamson, I think all of that together, they can mitigate the loss. They can't totally make up for it.
Let's shift gears to, again, LSU, and I want to talk women's basketball first. The LSU women, again, moving on to, again, Albany this weekend in the Sweet 16. But what took center stage was Kim Mulkey's press conference about a Washington Post article that yet to be published. She gave about a 4-minute statement calling it sleazy, a hatchet job, threatened legal action if it's a false story that's going to be published. Said she's going to be holding both the Post and the reporter accountable for the article. Just give me your thoughts on again, coming out before, again, the biggest game of the season, and again, maybe putting the spotlight on her and maybe less on the team, and then maybe the fallout of this.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at this. I think there's probably something to what you alluded to there, in that her team played very poorly in the first game.
Yes.
And I think taking the spotlight away from them, putting it on herself, might have been a way to try and get her players to relax. There's a lot of pressure on them as defending national champs. They've had some bumps in the road this year. And I think that may have partly been trying to alleviate the pressure on her team. She was so strong, though, in what she said, it almost made me feel like methinks thou dost protest too much, to quote Shakespeare.
Yes.
In that, you know, you're going so overboard to say there's nothing there and this is not credible. Before anybody knows what it is, it makes you wonder about the level of concern about what is going to come out. Now, given the people who are involved in this story, I don't think it's going to be a hit job, as she alluded to. I don't think those are the types of journalists who practice that type of journalism. But she was played basketball at the highest level. She's coached at the highest level for a long time. She has an extremely strong, forceful personality. You go back and dissect over 40 years, you're going to be able to find a few controversial things you can put in the story if you choose to, and they probably belong in there. We don't know what's going to be in the story. I think there's going to be some negative, there's going to be some positive, and we'll see what her response is. I'm sure she'll have a very forceful response. So let's see what's in the story, let's see what comes out, but, you know, let's focus on the team.
Right. Okay,
this is a great team, great coach, great bunch of players.
Right.
Let's see what they accomplish. When the story comes out, we'll deal with that, and hopefully it's one news cycle and we can move on.
For the team, 30-5. Again, they were second in the SEC. They beat Rice and Middle Tennessee and Baton Rouge last weekend. They're on to Albany again to take on the 2-seed UCLA on Saturday in the Sweet 16. That's a noon tip. On the number 1 seeded Iowa in the Albany the 2 regional will take on 5th seeded Colorado, and those two teams obviously again will match up. Tough. Albany too is just brutal, absolutely brutal deal to play. Give me your thoughts on how this team is playing and their chances of repeating.
Well, I thought going into the tournament that they were capable of repeating if everything came together at the right moment. They don't have a lot of depth. Okay, so that they got to avoid foul trouble, for one thing, to their key players. But I still think they have the talent, even if they only go, say, 7 deep. Right. They have the talent to possibly repeat, but I think the margin for error is extremely small. And I just don't see South Carolina losing. Okay? So I wouldn't necessarily expect a repeat. I think they can get to Cleveland and be in the Final Four. Certainly if they play Iowa in a rematch, that will be a huge game, maybe the highest rated telecast in women's basketball history. So we'll see. But this thing with Mulkey, I think, has added a little complication to the challenges they face. That could be a positive or a negative, depending on how they respond. If they rally the troops around her, that could be a positive. So we'll see. But it is brutal, and they just, at this point, they just got to try and get by UCLA. And I mean, it's got
to be one game at a time.
It's worse than the Pelicans' own.
Oh, it is. When I looked at the Albany 2 region, I'm like, well, again, obviously, whoever comes out of that regional is going to be battle tested because I mean, it is a tough regional. I want to go through this very quickly for the audience, if we could. Tulane baseball, 15-9, again winning their opening A series, American Athletic Conference Series against Rice, 2-1. Again, US Southern Miss tonight in Hattiesburg, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday. For them playing Texas San Antonio this weekend in their series. UNO baseball 13-10. Again, they swept Nichols this past weekend. They've got a Tuesday, Thursday, Friday set against UIW. The NOLA Gold are 3-1, 4 points. They're in third place after beating the Dallas Jackals on the road 35-22. I want to give congratulations to the Grambling men, the McNeese men for their time in the NCAA tournament, the Loyola men and women, and as well as the Xavier women in the NAIA tournament. Again, that's the teams that we put in. But I want to get to LSU baseball, okay? Because 19-6, 2-4 in the SEC. Again, they lost their first series at Mississippi State. They got run ruled in the last game. They lose their second series at home to Florida. They got run ruled in the last game. They go from the frying pan into the fire, taking on again the number one ranked Arkansas Razorbacks in Fayetteville this weekend. Again, Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. Last week, a lot of people were saying, don't be concerned, it's growing pains. This week, I think people are very concerned about the Tigers.
Yeah, and I understand it. When's the last time LSU was run ruled twice in 8 days?
Lost two opening series in the SEC.
Yeah, and there's understandable consternation about the pitching staff. Pitching staff was supposed to be the strength of this team.
Right.
The hitting was supposed to catch up to the pitching, and the pitching has not done the job. Now, I'm sure you remember the last time everyone was wringing their hands and gnashing their teeth about the pitching being an Achilles heel. That was last May.
Right.
And a month later, they were dogpiling it out in Omaha. They have a lot of new pitchers. They have a new pitching coach. There's a lot of adjustment going on there throughout the staff. So I think they have the talent there to get this worked out. The SEC baseball schedule is, we talk about a gauntlet. Oh. It's ridiculous. So where you are in mid to late March can look very different from where you are in mid to late May. So I understand the concern. It's totally legitimate, but there's a long way to go. There's no reason to believe this team can't get it straightened out and get back to Omaha, but you definitely want to see improvement from the pitching staff, and soon. And facing Arkansas is not the best opportunity for your pitching to get straightened out. But yeah, understand the concern. It's legit, but it's also early.
Very early, no doubt. I want to congratulate the LSU gymnastics team winning the SEC in the Smoothie King Center, a packed Smoothie King Center, by the way, for LSU gymnastics. That really bodes well for, again, the city hosting that event once again. LSU football spring practice. Interesting comments by, again, Nussmeier this week, actually last week, saying that 10 wins are no longer the standard at LSU, and they're ready to step this up. Interesting, again, with now Alabama without Nick Saban. Saban. A lot of people believe the SEC is going to be wide open, but yet you're bringing Oklahoma and Texas. To me, I think it gets much, much tougher for, again, everyone in this league in terms of, again, just your SEC schedule. But give me your thoughts on LSU football as again, we're a couple weeks into spring.
Well, I agree with Garrett Nussmeier. 10 wins should no longer be the standard. This is Brian Kelly's being paid $100 million to win a national championship and make them a national championship contender every year. This is his third year. Okay, they won 10, surprised people by doing so the first year. Right. Matched it with 10 more last year. Maybe a little disappointing, but they finished strong. That's good. So now the third year, you should be taking another step toward the ultimate goal, if not reaching the ultimate goal. So, yeah, you should be raising the bar above 10 wins, and that national championship contender status should be kicking in very soon. And Garrett Nussmeier is going to be a big key to whether that happens or not. And he's got a tough act to follow.
Yes, he does.
In Jaden Daniels. So, you know, well, you got to keep it in perspective because you have OU and Texas coming in. The SEC is already hard enough, you know, with or without Nick Saban. It's really hard. So, you know, we'll see. You know, if they win 10 again this year, that doesn't mean you blow the whole thing up. Right. But it does mean you should be taking another step in Brian Kelly's third year. And they should embrace that, which I think Garrett Nussmeier did.
Same thing for Tulane. When you look at Tulane right now, again, you know, some are all coming out of a big shadow again of Willie Fritz and what he's been able to do. Again, the most impressive thing thus far has been what he's been able to do in the transfer portal and getting these 5 stars to come to Tulane. Now, what fans have to realize is, man, they've had a lot of losses on this team. This is going to be a team that, again, you're going to need a roster card to maybe kind of, you know, check off and see who's going to be on the team. But with that said, high expectations for Tulane.
Yeah, and there should be. But they did lose a lot of important players. When 5-star transfers, 5-star recruits become transfers, there's usually a good reason for that, and that's because they have not had the impact that they envisioned or perhaps their school envisioned since they stopped being 5-star recruits and became college players. So there's no guarantee these guys are going to perform like 5-star recruits. Agreed. Nonetheless, those are important players that they've added at a time when they need to fill some holes. So, yeah, I would agree with you. I would caution people not to overlook the fact that they have some holes to fill and that there may be a few bumps in the road as they transition from the best coach in school history to a guy who looks like he may have a chance to be one of the best coaches in school history as well. Right. So lots of reasons for optimism, but let's keep it in perspective because there's a lot of transition going on.
I agree. Look, if you just look at the roster on paper, you see the changes, okay? You see, again, guys that defected because of Willie Fritz, guys that, again, that left because, their eligibility was up, for a myriad of reasons. Summerall's coming in, and again, he's got a new coaching staff. A lot of people think they're a shoo-in for, again, the playoffs. To me, I think, again, it's going to be baby steps anytime you make a transition from coach to coach.
Absolutely. Now, that doesn't mean they won't win the conference and have a chance to get into the playoffs, and things will go more smoothly than you might have anticipated. But those are real challenges that they face. New head coach, new coaching staff.
New quarterback.
New quarterback, and you don't know who it is because there's a competition going on there. Important players that are no longer there, players who are going to be important who have just now gotten on campus. So there's a lot of challenges they have to meet. There's a lot of reason to think they will meet those challenges effectively, but that brings question marks along the way. So we'll see. But compared to what Tulane has been for so long, you look at 2 years ago and this year and the optimism for the upcoming year, it's tremendous change from what it's been like for generations.
Right. Now we need to get that for the rest of the program again. Get that to where the football is, and they'll be fine. Les, thanks for being with us as always. Happy Easter to you and your family. Thanks for joining us here on Inside New Orleans Sports today.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, so many ways to catch our program now. There's a QR code on your screen that will take you to my website, ericasher.com, or the WLAE-TV YouTube page. Click that with your phone, and of course, you'll be able to see the show that way. But also, we're blessed with so many rebroadcasts of our program, either here on WLAE-TV, on Pelican Sports Television. Set your DVR, as I say every day, and you'll never miss the show. Catch me on the radio, 106.1 The Ticket. That is weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, again, 106.1 The Ticket. You can listen at the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn Radio app, our digital platforms. Anchor, Spotify is where you can find our podcast. We're on all podcasting platforms. And of course, again, as always, want to thank you for watching our program. I want to thank our underwriters for their support of our program. Please support our underwriters. And of course, the folks here at WLAE-TV. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Jane Wright, Logan Graffia, Danielle Wick, Alex Chacon, and of course, our fantastic director, William Hill. For Les East, I'm Eric Asher. Happy Easter to each and every one of you. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hello, I'm Consuelo Mack. Every week on Wealth Track, we sit down with great investors and financial thought leaders to talk in depth about strategies you need to build and protect your wealth over the long term. Join us on Consuelo Mack Wealth Track.
Mondays at 6 p.m. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television.